Hello. I'm doing well.
Hey, how are
You?
you?
Uh,
Hey, good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very happy to be here and to see a lot of people that are joining for today's reading group.
Of course. So we'll be because for many users they can either join us on Zoom or we do this live broadcasting on video streaming website in China as well as in for Tencent meeting as well. So I don't know for the other two platforms how many people. My students are trying to monitor there, but I don't know the exact number. But we will see.
Okay. All right. This is great.
Okay, good. So maybe we can get started since it's already 1 past 11. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Chao, and I'm a faculty from Xiamen University, China. And this is our 10th meeting for our SIGCOMM Paper Reading Group since we started October last year. So we have we have in the past 9 meetings we have read quite a few very interesting and exciting papers from different perspectives. And for this week, we are going to pick another paper focusing on more on the I would say measurement perspective of internet. And so this paper was published in SIGCOMM 24 last year in Sydney. I'm sure some of you already attended the presentation, but as I mentioned at the beginning, for every meeting, our reading group is not just about the presentation, but also about how presenter learn to present this paper. Because the presenter typically we don't invite author to present this paper. And after the presentation, we will have we typically have one or two authors join us for a discussion. So today we will together to study the paper titled "10 Years of the Venezuela Crisis: An Internet Perspective." So the title already is very intriguing, right? It already draws many people's eyes. How do we understand maybe certainly a social crisis or economic crisis from a networking perspective, right? The title is already sounds very exciting. So our presenter would be Xining Yuan, a PT student and United States, and our guest of honor is Esteban Carisimo, a postdoc at Northwestern University in the United States as well. So I think this is a very brief introduction about what we do and what we study today. So without further ado, Xining, you can start to share your screen and do the presentation. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Chao, and thanks for attending the meeting today. So the screen is right now.
Yes, we can see, but yeah, you need to play it. Yeah, okay, it's in full screen mode. Great.
Okay, so it's my honor to join this meeting today, and the paper I'm going to present is called "The 10 Years of the Venezuela Crisis: An Internet Perspective." So over the past 10 years, Venezuela has faced a major social and economic crisis, which has taken a serious toll on its internet infrastructure. In this paper, we just take a closer look at how the broader national issues like political instability, organizational breakdowns, sanctions, and power outages have disrupted the country's internet system and services. So first, I'd like to give a brief background in case maybe some of you are not familiar with Venezuela's current situation. So over the past decade, Venezuela's economy was heavily resilient on oil production. However, as oil output dropped by around 81.5%, the country's GDP also suffered a decline, shrinking by approximately 70.9%. Since GDP is a key indicator of the country's economic health, this collapse triggered a massive economic downturn. At the same time, hyperinflation surged, meaning that even people who had savings found their money rapidly losing value. This economic instability led to widespread dissatisfaction, eventually forcing more than 4.25 million people to flee the country. As a result, Venezuela entered one of the worst national crises in the modern history. Well, many researchers have studied this crisis from the different angles, such as public health or economic policy, but very few have looked at it from the perspective of the internet and digital infrastructure. So this paper is the first to systematically explore how the internet has been affected during the Venezuela's national collapse. So before diving into the analysis, the first step is selecting appropriate data sites. In this paper, the authors draw on a wide range of data sources, including MLab, RIPE Atlas, and several others. I will walk you through this data sites in more detail later during the analysis section. So we can start with our general analysis. So from a networking perspective, one of our fundamental elements of the internet is the IP address. Globally, most countries have successfully transitioned from the IPv4 to IPv6 due to a significantly large address space supported by the IPv6. However, Venezuela continues to rely primarily on IPv4, reflecting a slower pace of technological development. The figure highlights the two dominant internet service providers, ISPs in short, in Venezuela, CNTV, which is blue line, and the Telefonica, which is orange line. As the figure shows, CNTV has consistently announced the largest share of Venezuela's IP address space, maintaining a clear lead over the past decade. Telefonica, on the other hand, shows a different trajectory. Initially, it experienced a significant growth and began to narrow the gap with CNTV. Notably, around 2015, the difference in address space between the two providers shrank to approximately 11%, indicating Telefonica's rapid expansion during the period. However, this growth wasn't sustained. Around 2013, amid Venezuela's economic downturn, Telefonica's progress stalled and even contracted. But interestingly, is address blocks reappeared toward the end of the decade, suggesting a resurgence or reactivation of the sources. So in summary, well, CNTV has remained the dominant player, but Telefonica has gone through phase of growth, contraction, and reemergence, mirror the broader economic instability of the country. So after we have a general understanding of the ISP dynamics in Venezuela, we now turn to the network infrastructure. And the first component, which is peering facilities, especially the internet exchange points. I will use IXPs in short. In this analysis, we use the data from the PeeringDB, a widely used dataset for tracking the evolution of the IXPs and interconnection facilities around the world. So it represents this is not the only place we use this dataset. I will use it later for the following analysis. But here we only focus on the IXPs. We know IXP is really important part of the internet infrastructure because they improve the stability, the efficiency, and redundancy in the data transmission. I want to just give you a brief or simple example. Like, imagine you want to send a message from the San Francisco to Boston, but the only available exchange point is Chicago. Now, suppose a snowstorm hits Chicago in probably January or February. It's really common, huh? So if the exchange point in Chicago goes down, the message can be delivered. So however, if we had more like in IXPs in whatever New York or other places, the network could simply reroute traffic through those alternative paths. So the more IXPs a country has, the more resilient its internet becomes. So looking at this graph here, we can see the most countries, especially Brazil showing in yellow, has steadily increased their number of IXPs over the past decade. Nearly all countries in this region display an upward trend, and the only exception is our Venezuela, represented by the purple line. You can see it remains flat. Zooming in on the lower left panel, we can see that Venezuela's IXP count did increase slightly from 2 to 4, but this growth is minimal compared to the regional peers. We'll compare Venezuela's to the overall trend in LACNIC. The gap is significant, not just absolute numbers, but in the trend. This clearly reflects limited development and prolonged stagnation of Venezuela's network infrastructure over the past decade. And that is only the first component. So besides the IXPs, the submarine connectivity also play a crucial role of the country's network. While satellite link do exist, but over 95% of international internet traffic still travels through the submarine cables due to their high stability, the greater bandwidth capability, and lower latency. So submarine cables are really initial, not only for the intercontinental communication, but also for the long distance transmission within the countries. Therefore, the number of the quality of the submarine cable connections can survive as a strong indicator of the country's communication capability and the digital infrastructure. So that's why in this analysis, the authors specifically examined the Venezuela's submarine connectivity and compare it with other countries in the LACNIC region. To do so, they use the geographer dataset. This is a dataset widely used to track the global submarine cable deployment and changes over time. In the upper panel of the graph, you can see the most countries showing an upward trend in the submarine connectivity, with Brazil in orange line, proving especially rapid growth. However, when we zoom in on the Venezuela, we notice a small increase between 2011 and 2013, largely due to the additional of the ALBA cable, which connects Venezuela to Cuba. Notably, this connection was driven more by political motivations rather than the infrastructure's needs. Comparatively, the growth in the broader LACNIC region is striking. The total number of the submarine cables increased from 13 in 2000 to 54 in 2024, a nearly 4 times increase. In contrast, Venezuela's stagnation in submarine infrastructure highlights the limited progress and prolonged underdevelopment of its international communication capability. And that is a second component. As I mentioned previously, more and more countries have started transmission from the IPv4 to IPv6, primarily because IPv6 supports a vastly larger address space, allowing more devices have the unique address. So tracking a country shift from IPv4 to IPv6 can provide valuable insight into its network modernization and digital infrastructure readiness. In this analysis, the author uses a Facebook, we call Meta right now, IPv6 adoption dataset, which tracks the progress of IPv6 deployment across the different countries. In the upper panel, shows that most countries in the region experienced a notable increase in IPv6 adoption between 2019 and 2021. However, Venezuela stands out as the only country without a clear upward trend during this period. Zooming in on Venezuela, showing the lower panel, we can see that IPv6 adoption remained near zero until 2021. By mid-2023, adoption had only reached 1.5%, indicating very limited progress. This trajectory lags behind the regional trend by approximately 3 to 5 years, with little overall momentum. So when we compare this broader Latinx region, which followed S-shaped adoption curve, starting with a slow ramp up, followed by rapid circulation. Venezuela deviates significantly, showing no such inflection and remaining the completely off track. So after that, we're still considering the fifth component in the network infrastructure, which is a domain name system, which is a DNS in short. That is also really important component to consider as well. The primary function of the DNS is to translate the human readable URL, such as www.google.com, into the machine recognizable IP address. So maybe the 142.250.72.206. The deployment and latency of DNS servers directly determine a network's first hop performance, meaning they affect the initial speed and success rate of loading web pages or sending data requests. In general, the more DNS infrastructure a country has, the lower the latency and the faster users can access the online services. To analyze the process of local development of the root DNS servers, users use Charles TXT queries issued from Rab Atlas probes. In the upper panel, Brazil observed the most significant increase in DNS root replicas, growing from 18 to 41. Mexico expanded from 4 to 16 replicas, and Chile from 5 to 20. Argentina added 1 replica, starting from a relatively high baseline, which is 14. But only the Venezuela is only country showing the negative trend. It's dropped from 2 replicas to 0. Zooming in on Venezuela only in the low left panel, we can see that in 2016, Venezuela hosted 2 root DNS replicas, 1 L root and 1 F root. These were later replaced by only 1 single root instance. Eventually, no active root DNS replicas could be detected within the country. Comparing this with the whole Latinx region, we see that Latinx region, the number of the root DNS replicas grew from 59 in 2016 to the 138 in 2024. That is a 2.34 times increase. The growth highlights the contrast between the regional infrastructure expansion and Venezuela's regression. Therefore, the limited number of the DNS deployments in the Venezuela represents the broader stagnation of its internet infrastructure as well. And the final components of the network infrastructure covered in this analysis is called the content delivery networks, CDNs in short. So CDNs also play a really important role to improve the internet performance by preemptively copy the content to the server located closer to the users, allowing for faster, more stable access to data. So for instance, we all know the Netflix. So if Netflix does not have any CDN servers in the Venezuela, users would need to fetch contents through international routes traveling across multiple network nodes in the different countries. This can result in really slow speeds, higher cost, and a greater risk of the data loss and the packet delay. However, if local CDN nodes are deployment within the Venezuela, Netflix can cache its video content locally. This allows users to retrieve data from nearby servers, which significantly reduce latency and improve the streaming qualities. So in this part of the analysis, the authors examined the CDN deployment patterns of the four major content providers that widely used today. There are Google, Akamai, Facebook or Meta recently, and Netflix. Firstly, for Google, Google's off-net deployment increased earlier than plateaued. Brazil and Chile maintain consistently high levels, while Colombia and Argentina remain lower. Concentrating on the Akamai, we can see that Akamai shows a similar deployment trend compared with Google. The Brazil and Chile continue to lead with the highest off-net user coverage. But for Facebook's off-net began to increase after 2017, but remain limited in Venezuela. Mexico and Chile showed rapid growth and far outpaced Venezuela. Lastly, we analysis Netflix. The Netflix off-net deployment was most delayed, only starting roll like around 2021. Mexico and Brazil led adoption, while Venezuela saw minimal and late improvement. So we can conclude that Venezuela consistently rank among the lowest across all the CDN providers that make users' entertainment life really inconvenience. So this is all the stuff we have in the network infrastructure. And then we move to the second main part of this paper, which is the interdomain connections. So the better understanding the connection of the CNTV, Venezuela's dominant ISP, the analysis considers two dimensions, which is upstream and the downstream connections. So for the upstream connections refers to how the external networks send traffic to CNTV. They serve like us gateway to the global internet. If upstream connectivity is interrupted, users in Venezuela will experience slower speed, higher costs, and increased instability when access the international websites and services. And for the downstream connections, on the other hand, that indicate how the CNTV delivers traffic to its local clients. So for instance, locally we have the academic institutions, the banks, and some small ISPs. So this figures here refers to general trend in the number of the upstream and the downstream connections maintained by the CNTV over time. Zooming in the upper figure, we can see that the upper stream connectivity steadily increased from earlier 2000s, peaking in 2013 with 11 providers. And a significant drop occurs between the 2013 and 2020, reaching a low of 3 upstreams, likely due to the economic crisis and international sanctions. Partial recovery is observed after 2021. Then focus the lower panel here. We notice that the lower figure shows a continuous increase in the downstream connection since 2007, along with CNTV's nationalization and expanded role as a dominant domestic transit provider. The steady growth suggests, although the international setbacks, CNTV continued to build a robust local customer base. So that is overall we have for the upstream and downstream. And then we can focus on the upstream connection of the CNTV, and we can draw some other important insights here. So in this figure, we can see each row represents an upstream service provider identified by its autonomous system. We use AS in short. The right blocks indicates the periods during which each provider actively offered the upstream connectivity to CNTV. So in other words, CNTV was connected to the global internet through those providers. This visualization highlights the impact of Venezuela's political and economic presence on CNTV's international connectivity. Around 2013, at the onset of the national crisis, a significant number of the U.S.-based providers terminated their service to CNTV. So this marked a really major turning point, significantly shortening the Venezuela's access to the international network, internet. Although the withdrawal of many US providers, some European and Latin American providers stepped into the maintain CNTV connectivity. Notably, the AS 67672 continued service with submarine cables such as Suez American Crossing and AS 52320, formerly Brazil Telecom, maintained its connection with the global net cable. By 2023, however, Columbus network, which is AS 23520, stands as the only remaining US-based provider still offering the upstream service to the CNTV. So that's the first part about the upstream and the downstream of the interdomain connectivity. And then we move the next component up about this. That is what I mentioned previously, that is IXPs. Right now, when we look at the IXPs again, they play the new role and also a key for the system component. In this section, our focus shift to the connectivity. So when a country like Venezuela lacks local IXPs, network traffic is forced to detour through the foreigner countries, leading to the increased latency and the greater dependency on the international transit. Compared to the other Latin American countries, Venezuela's internet remains isolated at the IXP level, with limited participation in regional traffic exchange. So we can look at this figure. We can see that for Chile, it has 49.57% domestic users per year at the SCL. For the Uruguay, it's about 92.6% of users per year through the multiple IXPs, but only for the Venezuela, completely absent. No local network peers at any Latin American XP in this data slide. So we can conclude that XP are widely present across Latin America, but Venezuela lacks and deployed IXP as of 2024. So right now we have written down two main parts, which is network infrastructure and the interdomain connectivity. And we also have the last part we have to consider in this research, which is the network performance. After discussing the first components we want to discuss under this access network performance is download speed. Using the data from the MLab, a widely used platform for Maryland internet performance around the world. This helps us to understand how everyday users in Venezuela experience the internet access compared to other countries in the region. For the top panel, it indicates the evolution of median download speeds across the Latin countries. Colored line represents the key countries, for instance, Chile, Brazil, and so on. The gray line represents all other countries in the region, and the black line shows the regional average. And the purple line, that is our Venezuela, it shows little tiny improvement, remaining below 1 Mbps for most of the decade. So we zooming into the Venezuela in the lower left panel. It highlights the Venezuela's median download speed over time. The country shows below the 1 Mbps from 2010 to 2021. The modest increase is seen around 2022, approaching 3 Mbps. And then we focus on the lower left panel. We can see it displays the Venezuela's download speeds as a proportion of the regional median. In 2010, Venezuela was nearly the regional average, approximately 89%. So by 2020, it dropped only like 17%, reflecting the decline in relatively performance. Therefore, when we are trying to do the society effect analysis, well, nearly fiber plans have boosted speeds in recent years. The servers their service are only available in high-income area. The high-speed packages up to 300 Mbps cost 10 times the minimum WAC. So the lower tier service from 4 to 22 Mbps are still costly, 3 to 15 VEB per month, and not widely available to new users. So the network performance improves remain limited and unequally distributed, highlighting digital inequality within the country. And then the last part of the access network performance I'm gonna consider today is the how long it takes to access the Google's public DNS. To measure the DNS resolution performance, the authors used RIP Atlas probes to evaluate the round trip time I will use RTT in short to Google public DNS. This is separate from the choice TXT queries, which are used to analyze the root DNS service deployment. So firstly, we're concentrating on the top panel. It displays the median RTT from various countries to the Google public DNS over time. Most countries have seen significant latency reduces since 2016, indicating improving infrastructure and routing efficiency. Venezuela's RTT persistently remain in the 40 to 60 ms range, substantially higher than the regional peers. Then zooming in the Venezuela only, we can see the lower left panel here. It focuses on the Venezuela's median RTT trend. Although the RTT has decreased slightly in recent years, it remains really high. It's around 36.56 ms in 2023 versus Brazil's 7.5 ms. So the slow progress highlights the ongoing infrastructure limitation. Comparing the LACNIC in 2014, Venezuela's RTT was around 89% of the regional average, relatively close. So by 2020, the normalized value dropped to 70%, indicating that RTT becomes 5 to 6 times higher than the average. The highlight, this highlights Venezuela's growing lag in path efficiency. So that's all of the analysis mentioned in this paper. And before we end off this presentation, I also want to show some limitation mentioned in this paper as well. So now that we have completed the analysis is constrained by limited platform coverage. Well, the paper utilized several well-known platforms, including the speed test, the RIP Atlas, and PeerInDB. Their coverage is not uniform across country. Although Venezuela has relatively decent coverage compared to other Latin American countries, the overall data quality still falls short when compared to countries like the United States or those in Europe. Second, there are the data representation limitations. The crowdsourced nature of speed tests introduced the inconsistencies in measurement of frequency across the different countries, night providers, and time periods. So for instance, in certain regions where time frames, the number of test points is very limited, which may prevent the data from fully capturing the real-world situation. And the third one is about the PeerInDB. That is that is not really complete. Well, it uses like very widespread. It relies on voluntary submission and updates from the network operators. So as a result, some networks that do not actively maintain their records may be missing, which limits the researcher's ability to observe the full scope of IXP-related interdomain connectivity. And finally, there are uncertainties in the DNS root service visibility. The authors uses the trust.txt queries to identify the presence of root DNS servers, but there are two issues raised. The first one is not all root servers instance use unique identifier, making it difficult to determine which specific server is being queried. And the second one is since any cast routing is used, the probe can only observe the server it happens to reach, potentially missing a broad wave of DNS deployment across the entire country. So that's all of the presentation I have today. And the last one is all the websites organization I'm gonna use for like helping the slides making. And thanks for guys.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Xining. It's a wonderful presentation. I certainly enjoyed it. So I hope all the audience do. So now we will move on to our discussion. So if any people have any questions, you can either just unmute yourself and speak up, or you can, if you feel a little bit shy, you can just type your question in the chat, and I will monitor it. All right. So I guess let me, while people maybe are typing for their questions, let me just quickly ask one question I asked for every authors who attend our meeting. So Esteban, this is a very thorough and comprehensive environment study for Venezuela's internet infrastructure. So what motivates you to look into this issue?
Yeah, there are many explanations. The first one is, as you can see, there is a flag behind me. I'm Argentinian, so Venezuela and Argentina are in the same region. So I was very familiar with the problematic growing up in Argentina and living in Argentina. But this now living in the US is also in the news every now and then. But it's not only my personal background that motivates me to do research in Latin America. It's also Venezuela. This is a very, I would personally speaking, a very sad to hear that Venezuela collapsed, and there is a lot of people suffering from this crisis. But from a research perspective, it's a unique opportunity because Venezuela, not too long ago, was the wealthiest Latin American country. Their speeds and infrastructures were 10 years ago were equivalent to all the other Latin American countries. So this was an opportunity to see what happens with internet infrastructure and the resulting internet quality when a country's economy collapses as Venezuela did. There are many countries that do not have good economic performance, but Venezuela is the opposite. It's a country that did well for a long time and have very good infrastructure, but at a certain point, it stopped being able to maintain its economy. And as we know, the internet requires constant investments. So Venezuela was not able to keep the pace of investments of the rest of the countries. And that was for us an opportunity to see what happened and what could we recommend for in the future for Venezuela's internet reconstruction.
Okay, great. Thanks for the explanation. I think so. Following up on this question, yeah, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't notice that the flag of Argentina in your room. Sorry about that. But by the way, I'm a huge fan of Argentina's football team. So, but that actually reminds me, Venezuela has been having this crisis for like you mentioned in the paper, like over a decade, right? But from what I'm definitely not an expert in Latin America, but from what I read from the news, Argentina and Brazil are also may also suffer from similar issues, right? In particular, recently. That's my understanding. I don't know if I understand correctly or not. So, have you maybe tried to look into these two countries, or you haven't done that yet?
Yeah.
So Mhm.
Yes, I have a paper which was published in 2020. Argentina has been having a crisis, but compared to Venezuela, it's a very mild crisis. Argentina has high inflation now; it's going down, but it had, I think, last year a 300% inflation rate.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, so Argentina had an impact of its crisis. We don't have a paper about it, but it's not growing as fast as it did before, but its starting point was very high. So it's not compromising the current speeds at the moment, but it's not going as fast as it did. And Brazil is kind of the regional leader. Brazil has a very large expansion of internet services during the last 10 or 20 years. Brazil in 2010 has around 1,200 ISPs and now has 12,000 ISPs, is the second country with the largest number of ISPs in the world. So again, Brazil is in a very good position. And the current crises are they're not as severe as the one in Venezuela, or it's not quickly unfolding as Venezuela. And the second one is the starting point is very high.
I see. Yeah, I think that these are very interesting observations. I will try to look for your paper about Argentina and read it to get more details. So, Qiang, you have any questions? If you don't,
sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Esteban. Yeah, I'm Qiang from Xiamen University, and I think this is a pretty interesting angle in network research. So basically, I would like to know what are the key challenges when you conduct this research, and are there any technical challenges?
Absolutely. Xining presented some of the limitations at the end. Before going into your question, I'd like to say some words about the presentation. I think it was fantastic. It was a great job. And one of the things I liked the most, it was that the readings of the figures were different from mine, but they were correct. So for me, it's fascinating how the same plots that I did could have a different reading and explain different things for every person. So I really like that you proposed different readings of the graph. I think that was great. Thank you. But going into your question, yes, there were technical challenges. So going specifically about Venezuela, for example, we were interested in seeing how this infrastructure deteriorated during that time, but we were unsure whether we could obtain the data. And luckily for us, yes, there were a lot of data resources available with enough samples. For example, one of the things that we showed is that root DNS servers disappear from the country. All countries in the world would like to have their own root DNS servers, and Venezuela was very successfully getting their servers into its country. But you can, as root DNS servers use Anycast, the only way to see these servers is from probes from users within the country. And thankfully, there were probes installed within Venezuela. So that was the first challenge. The second one was which is about the last plot is, okay, we look to all these infrastructure features, but we don't know about its impact on the quality of experience. And bandwidth or throughput tests are a great indicator of that. And again, Google MLab collects this data, but we didn't know if Venezuelans were familiar with this service and they clicked for this speed test. But again, thankfully, they use it. But now we have a second problem is, as you've seen, we put into context all these figures. It's not about Venezuela. It's Venezuela compared to the rest of Latin American countries. And there are approximately, it depends on how you slice the world, whether you consider the Caribbean or not. But basically, Latin America is composed of 27 countries. So now we have 15 years of speed tests for 27 countries. Those are millions of speed tests. So how can you effectively manage statistics for all those split tests.
Yeah, so following this, do you have any follow-up research based on this extensive analysis on country level or network infrastructure?
Yeah, so I gave a presentation. Okay, this paper was presented at SIGCOMM, and then I presented this paper for Internet Society. And they have, I don't know if you're familiar with Internet Society, but Internet Society tries to promote internet access all around the world and helps local communities to develop their internet. So I gave this talk for Latin American and one for Venezuela, and Venezuelans were asking about different directions. And one of the things you can think about is, okay, the infrastructure, like the land infrastructure, all the cables are in bad conditions in Venezuela. So how can Venezuelans get better internet? And one of the answers is whether they can access to Starlink, which is a great technology. You don't rely on ground infrastructure to connect to the internet. And there is a lot of anecdotal evidence that Starlink is being used in Venezuela. But there are some challenges there. The first one is Starlink is very expensive. Starlink has the regional discrimination of prices. So here in the US, it costs approximately $130 per month, but in other countries, my country in Argentina, it costs around $50. But it's not available in Venezuela. But Venezuela's using it. How can this be possible? Because Venezuelans go to its neighbor country, Colombia, they buy a dish and use a Colombian issued credit card and start using it. But again, Venezuela is in a crisis and very few people can afford the Starlink services. So Starlink in Venezuela is a great follow-up direction, but I don't know exactly how to conduct that research. So feel free to continue if you are excited about it, but there are more things to see about Venezuela.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So sorry to jump in here. So I could be wrong, but I think one of the key perspective you focus on is interdomain connectivity, right? In particular, how fast can Venezuela access the rest of the world, and the other way around, right? So have you looked into the domestic network access in the country? For example, in China, for historical reasons, we do not have a very large active bandwidth going outside the country. This is due to history reason, right? So because I remember the data should be the active bandwidth going out of the country is maybe I forgot, maybe tens of terabytes bits per second. I forgot the exact number, but I think that's on that order. But we have almost, I think we have over 1 billion internet users in our country. So if you divide it by 1 billion, it's not high speed at all, right? But within our own country, for services and websites hosted in our own country, we can access it very fast, right? The user experience, I must say, is great. So does it happen similarly in Venezuela, or in Venezuela the network speed also is also very slow in the country when accessing websites or services within the country as well?
Yeah, that is a great point, and this is actually something that we did we added in the appendix. We don't have a longitudinal analysis, but yes, countries like the US, China, or Germany, for example, they serve their content from within the country. So this is great. Right. So if you are in any city of China, you're going to be close to a cache, to a data center, and you don't need to use the international bandwidth to access to the most popular services. The same in the US and most of the technologically developed countries. But Venezuela is quite the opposite. Most of the most popular services are hosted in the United States. So they need to go across international bandwidth. As we've seen, they have not constructed any submarine cable in the past 25 years. So they have the same bandwidth as they did in 1998. But the current websites use demand much more bandwidth. So this is very bad. So the current conditions is the ground infrastructure in Venezuela between Venezuelan networks is not good. But even if it were better, they would still require to cross international infrastructure because the content is not hosted locally.
I see. So yeah, so that's different from the situation in China, right? So I think that makes sense because I think people around the world they like to use Google, Facebook, Netflix, and so on, right? That's very important.
But even one of the things we found is like Venezuela's popular newspaper is not hosted in Venezuela because, for example, there are no hosting services in Venezuela or not modern hosting services.
I see. Yeah, that explains. Yeah, but in I think in many of the figures in Xining's presentation as well as in the paper, we do see things are improving like starting 2022, right? Around right? I think around that time. But on the other hand, that time frame also collided with COVID, right? COVID-19, right? So how does that factor play into the Venezuela crisis and as well as its internet infrastructure?
Yeah, so there are two things that we cannot know whether this is the root cause or not, but there is some correlation in the COVID, and there is some information we collected from ground source people in Venezuela for field research we did. So the first one is COVID, as you said. The government realized during COVID that internet was essential. People did not go to school. For example, children did not go to school. People did not go to work. And they realized that their network was collapsing for too long. And they were not able to make the country to work because they didn't have successful internet access. So the government released ISP licenses to new local internet ISPs. So they created, some local people created new ISPs, but now those are more modern ISPs, but the problem is that the connection is not very affordable. So you start to having a gap in Venezuela where a few people can access to these modern ISPs, but the rest of the people cannot afford it. So you start having a gap. But when you measure here, the overall trend is going up with the gap, but it's going up. The second part is the US, there is a lot of sanctions involving Venezuela, especially imposed by the US. And the US partially lifted some of those sanctions during COVID. So those things happened at that time. I don't know if this is the cause. It's more likely that the creation of new ISPs is helping Venezuela to recover very slightly, but it's recovering. But the sanctions it's impossible for us to test whether this was a root cause factor.
So regarding the sanction, is it so? If we know that the U.S. is putting some placing some sanctions against Venezuela, but so that's probably one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons many U.S. providers pull back their connectivity peering services, right? But in the meantime, say Venezuela, if the country needs to update its devices like routers and switches and other peering devices and even cable, right? So I don't think the country itself has any major device vendor, right? So it also has to purchase something outside the country. So have you maybe by any chance looked into like the diversity of devices used in the country in the past 10 years? The reason I'm asking is because go ahead. Yeah.
No, we were curious about it. Who is selling devices to Venezuela, but it's not only that. We were curious whether Venezuela can upgrade. But even let's suppose there are no sanctions here. Venezuela has enough money to purchase or to upgrade this. And when we were talking to people in Venezuela, one of the things they were saying, not even about routers and switches, it's about optical fiber. Optical fiber is not very expensive, but they need to repair optical fiber cuts. And this requires equipment because when they weld the optical fiber, these are very precise equipments that are typically expensive. They are not super expensive, but they are expensive. It's not like, I don't know, fixing a cable, like a copper cable. And one of the things they said is they are short on these equipments. And when one of these optical fiber welders go down or have some issues, they don't have any piece to repair those. So it's been very problematic. So when a fiber gets cut, they don't have the resources to fix it.
That's true. That's true. So the reason I was just mentioning the reason I asked this question because I remember once I reviewed an IMC paper talking about trying to infer the brand and model of different devices by building a fingerprint database using ICMP and traceroute and so on. I think that I forgot whether eventually we accept that paper or not. I think maybe we'll accept that.
Yeah, I remember that paper. I remember that paper.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe someone if someone is interested, he or she can use that so that set of tools to look into Venezuela or other countries to study the diversity as well. Because the reason I reviewed that paper, and also I know that paper used one of China's autonomous systems as a case study. So, but it'd be interesting to look into other countries as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So, right. So we only have 3 or 4 minutes. But there's another question I ask I ask every authors who attend our meeting. So, like, this is a measurement paper. It's very thorough, very comprehensive. You guys did a wonderful job looking at all those data. But for graduate students who just start their either master study or PhD study, sometimes it's hard to pick a direction or area, right? So for people who are interested in measurement, in particular internet measurement, how to get hands-on? Like, if for example, if I'm a fresh PhD student, I look, hey, there are so many data, right? You use many data sets. It's like, okay, where do I get started? I think I'm asking this because we are hoping using this group meeting as an opportunity to ask people like you guys who publish at SIGCOMM and NSDI to share experience for the newcomers of our community. So please.
Yeah, so I was there. So I started doing research during my master's, and my master's thesis was about Bolivia, which is a relatively small country in Latin America. And they were building an IXP. So I thought that was a great opportunity to see how a new IXP could change paths and what is going to be the impact with that. So for social variables is whether you have information that something disrupted happened or is about to happen. So Venezuela, that happened, the crisis already unfolded, or any other political event that you'd like to track, or not politically necessarily, social event. I don't know, something that fundamentally changes the landscape of the country. As you were saying, Argentina is also living a crisis. Maybe it's not as severe, but in some years we can see the effects of that. So now that you are a master or a PhD student, and I suspect you are taking courses and you're getting like all the knowledge required to do this kind of network research, now you are no longer a user, you are an expert. So you can diagnose what are the reasons that could make internet slower. And I will start with the very basics. For example, DNS, or for example, where the pages are hosted, or bandwidth tests, and whether you can see something from there. And you start making the story. So for example, there is an event. Let's be positive, not negative as Venezuela. Let's be positive of Bolivia. Or let's suppose you live in a city that the city is about to build, a new data center. Or a company is going to getting your city is going to put a cache in your city, or your city is going to I don't know, a coastal city, and it's going to have access to submarine cables. Okay, see how the traffic changes before and after. Okay, and that is a great starting point. For example, going back to my country, Argentina recently accepted Starlink services in the country. So we measured this. What was the latency between Starlink in Argentina after and before Starlink put a ground station in the country? And you can see the trend and how that benefits users. So start from the basics. Everybody here, I'm assuming, is an expert or is about to be an expert, is going to have a lot of knowledge. You're going to have the toolbox to go for those problems.
Yeah, because all the even we have very diverse, very giant amount of data, but if you look at the basic, right, as you said, going back to the fundamentals, the tools used to gathering those data are actually not that hard to build, and I actually already have been there for a long time, right? So either you use after you have a basic understanding about those tools, and when you look at the data collected by those tools and try to analyze it, you will have a better understanding, as you said, maybe starting with something, maybe some incident or some very simple, a very simple experiment, like the download bandwidth experiment, right? And then starting from there and trace out, and then you can continue to dig step by step to basically to build up your perspective or your vision or your view of the whole internet. I think that's what you. I don't know if I summarized that correctly or not, but I hope I do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, okay, wonderful. That's great. But we're already 2 minutes past our original schedule. But let me ask, hog the microphone to ask one more question. So Esteban, what do you think would be the next important problem to understand along this line of research about around for example, aka the measurement of internet statistics? And so what's the next big thing you have in mind?
There are many things here. So there's a very wide range of things. I typically do a lot of research. I like a lot of interdisciplinary research. I started there. I go back and forth between math and interdisciplinary research, but there are a lot of political events around the world that are going to change. Governments, here we have a very wide audience here, and we come from different countries, even from different cities, and governments all around the world would like to make internet better. It's not that Venezuela or the Venezuelan administration doesn't want to have a better internet. They do, but they don't have the resources or the right policy. So we see that governments all around the world would like to have better internet for their citizens. The question I have is whether they are successful. Right. Are they thinking the problem in the correct way? Are they using the right tools? Are they investing money or inviting the private sector to invest money well in their countries or in their areas? Sometimes they think they're doing the right thing, but they are not being successful. So I'd like to see all these impacts around the world, in Venezuela, in Argentina, could be in China, could be anywhere, from federal governments to regional entities to local governments.
I see. Okay, I think that's very important. Basically, if we could use what we collected, the data we collected, and we try to analyze it, and we use this analysis to provide guidelines to either government or other authority or companies so that they can be more informed about how we can build or upgrade our network. I think that will be a very powerful and very powerful and promising, not only just research-wise, but also very practical, has very practical meanings and impact on people's daily life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one last comment I have about this is there are a lot of very there are a lot of characteristics on each country in each society that do not replicate across the world. There is no one recipe to construct a successful network. Let me give you an example. If there is a town which has a lot of hills and mountains, maybe some technology doesn't adapt well as another town that is in a plain land. Okay, so we need to think problems in a very holistic way. So we need to consider a lot of factors, and there is no one recipe that is going to make our internet better in each corner of the world.
Exactly. We have to do one step a day.
Yep.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So yeah, we already way past our original schedule. So let's thank Xining and Esteban again for joining our group and do a wonderful presentation, wonderful discussion, and we learned a lot, not only about the paper itself, but also some stories behind this paper and what's going to be next we should be focusing on along this line of research, right? Okay, great. So I think we because we are past our schedule, so we will call it a day, and so this marks the end of our 10th meeting for our SIGCOMM Paper Reading Group, and we hope to see many of you in 2 weeks, and later we will also post the video to YouTube and other and also the summary of our meeting to everything in SIGCOMM.org. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Esteban, Xining, and Qiang. Thank you. And for everyone, have a good day, good night, and good afternoon. Bye.